All right, so Dan, you'll record. Dan, who is my co-organizers on this on this series, and we are really happy to have you, Tongxin, come and share your thoughts about research needs, that the way you see it from the industry. That's very important for us in academia, and I know that a lot of academic people are connecting to listen to you. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Tong Xin Zhang, whom I've known now for quite some time from ISO New England. And he leads currently, after the late Eugene Litvinov, who many of us knew, passed suddenly. Dr. Tongxin is the director of basically effectively what is R&D in the ISO New England. They call themselves now Advanced Technology Solutions. We all look forward to Tongxin to hearing from you about the research needs. So it's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Maria. It's my pleasure to be here. I just want to make sure you can see my screen, and yes. Because I have this, Zoom on my screen, so I don't know whether that actually blocked the part of the screen or not.
We can see it, right? Everybody can see, right? Yeah. I can see full screen, like slide mode.
Okay, you can see full screen. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Let me try to move my some of the stuff here. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry for this. I mean, I'm not very familiar with Zoom, so.
Yeah, you use in the business side, you use WebEx, but we use more Zoom in academia. So I think it should be okay. If you just continue clicking, it'll be fine. And just while you're getting ready, I want to tell people that please post your questions in the chat. The questions that may happen in your head as Tongxin talks, just type them in the chat. But if there are some quick clarifying questions, just raise your hand and Tongxin can answer it in real time. So maybe we can have maybe 5-10 minutes at the end to answer questions, Tongxin.
Oh, sure, definitely. No problem for me. I just want to make sure that I may, okay, just let me know that when there's a question, Maria.
Right, I will. Okay. And then you should watch also, yeah.
With that, I'm gonna just start. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Tong Xin Zhang, as Maria mentioned. I'm the director of Advanced Technology Solutions at ISO New England. So it's my pleasure to be here to talk about the challenge opportunities we're facing during the clean energy transition. So in today's presentation, I'll just first focus on the unique issues brought by the clean energy transition and talk about the research need for the power system operation, planning, and the market from system operator perspective. I know there's a lot of talks around this, but I want to put my talk to be a kind of focus on the system operation perspective. So I view this as really a good opportunity for a two-way communication. So please do not hesitate to interrupt me if you have any question. Let me see, how do I move my slides?
Just click arrow down.
Okay, let me try. Hold on a second. All right. Okay. So this is so this slide is really just for those of you who have never heard of ISO New England. So this is just really a brief introduction of the company. So as you know, ISO New England is a not-for-profit organization regulated by FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So the company has three kind of main tasks. One is the grid operation, to coordinate maintaining reliable operation of the system. Then the other one is the system planning. So we have to plan the system such that to ensure that not only we have enough secure, enough resources to supply demand, but also deliver that through the transmission system. The third major responsibility is actually the market administration. So we design and run and oversees the market where the wholesale electricity is bought and sold. All right. So this is some quick facts about the New England. You can see the system is actually located in the northeast of the United States. So it serves the 6th state of New England with 14 million people. The system had historical peak load about 28 gigawatts in the summertime and 22 gigawatts in the wintertime. The system contains 350 megawatt generators with about 31 gigawatt of total installed capacity. We have actually about over 9,000 miles of high water transmission lines and has 13 transmission connections to the neighboring state like New York and Eastern Canada. In terms of the market, we have about 1,100 pricing nodes. So the New England actually administrates a series of market and offers in energy and services and capacity products to the market participants. We have for capacity markets, which we sell the capacity product. We also have a forward reserve market. This is a kind of seasonal market. And we have a day ahead and real-time market, which is primarily focusing on energy and ancillary service markets, ancillary service such as spinning reserve, non-spinning reserve, and operating reserve. In addition to that, we have hour ahead regulation market. This is kind of in real time. So if you look at the resource mix, the New England region has experienced a tremendous change in its resource mix. This figure actually highlights the percentage change of major generation types during the past 20 years. If you look at the figure on the left, you can notice two noticeable trends. From year 2000 to year 2020, we have a significant decrease in oil and coal and oil resources. And so it went from 15% and 19% and down to almost 0% in year 2020. So you talk about 0.1%. But at the same time, you see a big increase of natural gas fired units. So you will see that it increased from 13% to almost to 43% in 2022. So if you look at the total resource mix and show on this pie chart, you see natural gas installed capacity account for 43%. Nuclear is 22%, and import we got a pretty large portion is actually from import at 21%. Renewables at this moment is not that high. We only got about 10%, and hydro is about 6%. But if you look into the future, renewables is going to be coming in, and storage coming in also. So we also have transmission upgrades that accommodates the change for those the integration of clean energy resources here. So if you look into the renewables, we're going to have a big increase in the wind power resources. So you talk about in our interconnection period, you talk about 15 gig wind resources over there. We're also going to see a big increase in the solar powers, and it's growing rapidly. So we have been forecasting that ISO England region going to have 8,000 megawatts within a decade. We're going to see a big increase in the transmission investment, and also see a big increase in the battery storage technologies. So let me see. So as you can see that in recent years, the decarbonization had been focused on the energy policy in many regions, had been the focus of the energy policy in many regions in the US. So each state in Yunnan has its own renewable portfolio standard shown in the figure on the left here. So by year 2040, most of the states in Yunnan will require at least 35% of renewable portfolio renewables penetrations. So some say that you can see even more aggressive sets target to be 75%. Such energy policy will significantly affect the way electricity is produced and consumed. From the supply side, we already talked about that. We will see the increase of renewables, energy storage, and distributed energy resources. So from the supply side, from the demand side, you actually can see the energy efficiency and the electrification of transportation and the heating sectors will reshape the demand curve. So in the next couple of slides, I'm sorry, I will highlight the major challenges brought by the clean energy transition. First of all, we can see that the renewable generation brings a high level uncertainty. Wind and solar generation highly dependent on the weather conditions, making the renewable forecasting an important task in grid operations. The Yunnan has experienced a decline of load forecasting accuracy in the past few years. So wind behind meter solar generation increased sharply. In addition to that, the fluctuation with renewables has increased system operational risk. The second challenge is actually related to the grid complexity introduced by the integration of distributed energy resources. So when a large amount of solar and PV installed behind the utility meter, they are generally not dispatchable by the transmission system operator. So therefore, their impact on the transmission system may not be predictable by the system operator. So even if they become dispatchable in the future, the coordination between transmission and distribution system remains challenging, and modeling both transmission and distribution networks is very complex. So in addition to that, it is also impractical to control and monitor a massive number of DERs at the ISO level. So another challenge you can be seen in the complexity of the coupling of the market intervals. You say so with increasing number of storage devices, the market outcome of one time interval become more and more coupled with another. So this is actually due to the fact that the efficient operation of storage resources depending on the information of multiple market intervals as it's shifting load from one time interval to another. Therefore, a storage charge and discharge cycle should be determined simultaneously. In addition to that, demand side dynamics and load patterns shifts is creating new dynamics for the power system operation. So the figure on the left you can see shows that the change of load shapes with respect to the different levels of solar penetration. The higher the level of solar PV penetration, the steeper you can see that the system load change is during the day. Furthermore, you can see electrification of transportation and heating sectors not only adds more demand to the system, but may also affect the load shape greatly as we start including the customer behaviors. This is very interesting observation here. You can see that as the renewable penetration comes in and our load have shifted greatly. You can see some of the time, you can see a kind of double peak over there. A lot of people call it like dark curve, and we start to see, especially during the springtime, we can start to see a negative price, and we start to see actually low, I would say, seasonal off-peak period actually happen during the day, not overnight. Then another thing is that related to this big shift is that with this decarbonization, traditional resources with on-site fuel are gradually retiring, creating energy security issues. Extreme weather due to the climate change is making such problem even serious. So New England system heavily depends on the natural gas system, so has experienced a tremendous stress during the peak winter days. So this has been a big problem for us. So during the cold snaps, for example, the heating demand for natural gas is typically high, and leaving almost no gas for the electricity generation. The system has to rely on liquefied natural gas, which LNG, whose inventory actually has to be secured months ahead. In addition, cold temperature and snow coverage also significantly reduce renewable generation and affects the oil refuel schedules due to icing on the road. And system resilience therefore become a huge challenge for the future grid operation. As more and more renewables are being integrated in the system, and revenue adequacy and long-term resource mix become an issue. As you know, that states actually maintain the authority to resource procurement, so they will issue state level RFP, so more and more renewable with certain form of subsidies are being integrated into the market. So this, in fact, actually can see inconsistent with the current market construct. So when renewables come into the market with subsidies, it generally deprice the capacity marketing price. And then in addition to that, it will also deprice the energy market price. So this is going to create the revenue shortfall for other existing, fleet basically, and it actually screw the market entry and exit. So what is the path forward? This figure shows what I think the whole decarbonization. So the green, the color in green shows what's coming. By the caused by the decarbonization. So we can see the renewables coming in, these DERs, storage, industrialization. And the challenge created by those decarbonization efforts is shown in red, which causes uncertainty issue, complexity, security, adequacy, and load dynamics. So to address those challenges, I'm thinking that we should work on the area below, which shows in yellow, pink, and blue. So the area I'm thinking is actually related to how do we manage risk. So that's including the risk-based operation and how do we price it, and how do we consider the system resilience, and the situational awareness. The second area I think that we need to do is increase the system flexibility. That's include how do we efficiently integrate DERs, storage devices, and possibly develop flexibility products. For long term, from resource adequacy perspective, we need to ensure that we have sufficient resources to supply to meet the long-term load growth. So that could include capacity market reform, carbon pricing, including the flexibility attribute in some certain form of long-term capacity construct, and also scarcity pricing for the energy market. So we also need to deal with complexity. So I think we need to work on the reducing the complexity by introducing advanced computing technologies. We need to develop the advanced modeling and simulation techniques, for example, coordination, co-simulation, or transmission distribution system, and also deploy the decentralized control. So, so in the next couple of slides, I'll just pick up some of the areas that I talk about my thought there. So to deal with the uncertainty, I think we need a more streamlined risk management process for system operations. The power system operation is basically a risk management process. So where the system operator balances the supply and demand at different time scales with respect to different risk metrics or security standards. So however, those security standards such as N-1 security standard are often deterministic. So in fact, so only a small set of discrete events are considered, and there is no consideration of the fluctuation of renewable generations. So neither event probability nor its impact are considered in the standards. So in addition, the economic trade-off between cost and reliability benefits are not taken into account. So therefore, the current practice can either be too costly or unsecure. So it needs to be improved for the future grid operation. So I think a probabilistic risk-based approach should be developed to support system with a high level of penetration with renewables. So managing the risk in system operating process will necessitate the need for a proper pricing of risk under a market environment. Just like our locational marginal prices that reflects the cost of maintaining the N-1 security standard and reflecting costs of respecting a probabilistic risk matrix in the market price, clean prices can bring a lot of benefits to the market in terms of financial incentives. In terms of the market transparency, a fixed trade-off between cost and reliability, and financial incentives for dispatch following an investment in risk mitigation. So one possible design is to incorporate operating reserve demand curve, so which should be derived from a probabilistic risk measure. The RDC is often considered as an approximation of stochastic optimization problem, which reduce the total system cost on expectation. The ORDC design can also recognize the value of reserves and provide additional revenue to generate generating resources. So another area of risk management is how to address system resilience. This has become an important area given that the future resource mix is more dependent on the weather conditions. Extreme weathers, extreme event, whether it's man-made or natural disasters, or can create significant impact on system operation, even though their probability is low. This is particularly true when in multiple systems, including the fuel delivery system and the communication systems, are considered. So from a market design perspective, two types of resilience could be very important and need to be discussed here. So one is this transmission system resilience, and the other one is the supply system resilience. So potential cascading failure pose significant risk to transmission system operation. So identifying such risk and reflecting the cost of mitigation through a market contract can be challenging. So with increasing level of renewable penetrations, fuel and fuel generating unit have on-site fuel storage. They seem to have enough capacity but limited fuel supply, such that the demand cannot be met during extreme weather conditions. We may need to consider introducing market products to ensure fuel procurement for units with fuel storage for a longer forward market to better utilize the fuel inventories. As part of risk management, so situation awareness should be improved and system risk should be assessed. So we should introduce weather-dependent risk management, risk assessment, and construct a proper guidelines in defining risk mitigation policies based on conditional probability. And whenever is cascading failure assessment based on extreme weather forecasts, as to the system supply conditions, we should improve the energy security awareness by monitoring the energy inventories, for instance, oil tank levels and reservoir levels, as well as storage state of charge and gas pipeline conditions and the LNG inventory conditions. Future grid operation needs more flexibilities. So one way of increasing system flexibility is to encourage the market participation with distributed energy resources. DERs bring many benefits to the grid, including economic benefits, flexibility benefits. In the recent FERC Order 2222, DERs are allowed to participate in the wholesale markets through an aggregation. So in a controllable fashion to avoid complexities. So efficient DER market structure, I think, still need to be enhanced to address both transmission and distribution system issues. The challenge remains in the regulatory policy, market modeling, design, and the market structures and compensation. One question to be answered includes, for example, whether there is a need for local and energy market in addition to the wholesale market, whether the market coordination, what would be the market coordination scheme if we have a both transmission level market and distribution level markets, and what would be the compensation scheme, whether it should be a LMP or the DLMP. So those are the open issues. The storage can increase system flexibility. So its peak shaving capability flattens the electricity demand curve, reducing the flexibility needs from other resources. So currently ISOs are developing storage market participation models, but most ISOs efforts has been focused on self-management state of charge. ISO see self-management can be efficient in the short run, but could pose a reliability risk when a large number of storage are integrated into the system and mismanaged during the tight system conditions. So a better participation model recognize the value of storage and their physical operating characteristics, and the system reliability needs is highly desirable. So to further increase the system flexibility, I think we should introduce. I think the flexibility should be procured through a market environment. This can be achieved by introducing flexibility product in the wholesale electricity market. Such flexibility product can be defined as a rump. It could be reserves, well, different type of with different durations and even options. So another way of procuring flexibility is introducing co-optimization and multi-peer pricing. Such scheme can achieve social welfare maximization and increase system reliability by proper coordination in scheduling, and also provide dispatch incentives through proper coordination in pricing. I think pricing is very important in terms of coordination. So we have developed a multi-peer pricing scheme which coordinate from the day ahead prices and schedule from day ahead and to real time. Such improvement will also be able to reduce out of marketing payments such as opportunity costs. An important area of supporting the future resource mix is to have a market mechanism to ensure resource long-term revenue adequacy. So as we know that the renewable resources marginal cost is extremely low. Under the current market marginal pricing principle, energy market price will become zero or negative due to the existence of renewable credit in a renewable dominated system. So such price will not be able to serve as a signal for generation investment. A generator will not receive enough market revenue from the energy market alone. So there are several ways to address the revenue, I would say resource adequacy issues. One is to implement scarcity pricing in energy market. This could include establishing a special pricing rules under emergency conditions, which reflect the cost of voluntary load shedding or emergency purchase from neighboring control areas. Or constructing opening reserve demand curve, which incorporates the variable loss load and the different reliability levels. And in addition to that, transmission scarcity pricing should be considered. Another way to deal with revenue adequacy is actually the capacity market construct, under which resources missing money from the energy-only market will be recovered based on their capacity value. However, capacity market need to be improved, and we are transitioning to a clean energy future. These changes include compensating resource explicitly based on their marginal contribution to reliability, and capturing resource additional attributes such as the flexibility attribute, fuel security attribute, and also their and environmental contribution, for example, emission. In addition to that, I think transmission impact also should be considered in the resource adequacy assessment. And we also have a challenge in developing the demand curve for system reliability or capacity. Carbon pricing can be an efficient way of meeting decarbonization objective. The programs such as cap and trade and the carbon tax will increase the cost of carbon emission resources. By incorporating carbon prices in the energy offers, carbon emitting resources will be dispatched less in the energy market and increase the energy prices. Therefore, the energy market revenue for other resources will be increased. So this is going to reduce the revenue requirement from the capacity market. However, a carbon pricing program need to be carefully designed to deal with the carbon leakage issues and among different regions regional electricity market and sectors such as different sectors such as energy, heating, and transportation. So in addition to that, electricity price formation and the different carbon pricing schemes should be further investigated. The last area I want to talk about is how do we improve? I would say how do we manage operational complexity? I think we can explore this area into three directions. One is to develop advanced simulation tools. For example, we can do the transmission and distribution calculation. I'm sorry, call simulation. We need to develop a hybrid simulation for inverter-based resources. We also can develop a comprehensive look-ahead risk assessment approach for both transmission and supply systems. The second area I'm thinking is that we need to deploy advanced computing technology and architecture. For example, we need to deploy parallel computing, cloud computing, and also incorporating the machine learning technologies there. The last area I think that we should work on is to develop decentralized control and coordination schemes. We need to look at the distributed computing control and control with a certain form of aggregation. So with that, so I'm going to conclude my presentation by just, highlight some key takeaways here. So you can see that decarbonization actually creates significant challenges in characterization of the grid from resource mix to demand composition. So such changes bring many challenges to power system operation, planning and marketing area reliability, and economic efficiency and complexity. So in order to support such transition to the future grid, I think research will be needed in terms of developing new operational method, new products, pricing schemes, and better competition method. So with that, that's all for today. So thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tongxin. This is quite an agenda that you have there. Maybe to add to this last thing, to support the conclusion on the tools, operation methods and tools, I want to just quote Professor Anjan Bose, whom a lot of us know. We were doing some brainstorming recently, and he said, and this is actually bitter reality on disconnect between the tools that we develop and what's used in the industry. He said, we really need next generation software. So you have the method, you write the paper, you go and show what it can be done on some set of examples. But then I think what industry needs is really next generation software so that these methods are demonstrated to the regulators, to policymakers better, and they're adapted and they are scalable on real systems. I think this is something that he pointed out big way, and I agree 100% with that. So just interested in your comments to that. Are these going to be the traditional vendors who have developed, you say, okay, I have the power flow, I have this, and everything is working, versus how are we going to go from all these needs to the next software that ISOs need? Can you comment a little bit on that?
Sure, definitely. I think as you can see that with this challenge, we need the new tools there. It's not only about the technology, but also about operational method there. So one thing I mentioned there is I would like to kind of switch to a risk-based operation. So in order to do that, I think there's one big thing is not only just about developing new software, but also we need to developing standard. So for example, currently we use a -1, right? But we did not have a good, I would say the -1 is pretty much a deterministic approach, right? We did not consider the probability of things happening, and we did not consider the impact. So somehow we need to come up with a metric to say, hey, this is how we measure the system and system risk. And we need to say, for example, the standard organization is supposed to come up with one such that we can allow everybody to adopt it and then operate against that kind of standard. I think this is going to be extremely important. So once we, I think the whole industry and as well as the academic community is supposed to come together and try to define a meaningful standard, such that we can develop new method that can utilize that standard. For example, you can see, for example, many people have been using the CR, right? Conditional risk, conditional value-added risk, and we should be able to, at some certain point, we should be able to adopt it. Okay.
Okay, so related question to that, Tongxin. There is, as I'm sure you know, and probably ISO New England is participating in this ARPA-E program on Perform, which is really dedicated to what you're describing. We participate in it through Lehigh, and really elephant in the room question is, as we try to define this conditional value of risk, is asymmetry of information. Is the ISO supposed to know all the uncertainties, or are the stakeholders in their bids supposed to internalize these uncertainties and bid more certain bidding? And how does that map into markets? In other words, it's no longer just the top-down standard in which we put all the expectations on the system operator that they would predict the future. This distributed uncertainty management, asymmetry of information is just, that's what markets thrive on, but somehow we are not connecting it with market design or even operations. You know, most of the projects in that, I listen to the reviews, most of the projects assume that ISO is going to know everything. So where are we going with all of that?
That's a good question. I think we had that discussion a long time ago when we started, you know, at the beginning, you know, when we first look at the stochastic optimization, how they're going to be used in the market environment. So I think is this way. I mean, as you can see that we talk about risk management. So there are two parts. One is from centralized, from system operator perspective. What are the risks for the system operation? We're looking at from reliability perspective. The other one is actually individual market participants. How do they manage their risk? So I think they have to come to both. We can't just say, hey, every ISO will know everything. That's not true. There are private information the ISO would not know. So that's information supposed to be managed, controlled by the market participant, and they supposed to also reflect that into their bid. For example, if they can make sure that they cannot make sure that they can get a fuel, for example, and there's not much we can do from the ISO perspective. But there are things, for example, when ISO trying to come out to manage risk, for example, we were talking about how do I balance it? What are the biggest contingencies in the system? So those are the information actually we know, and those are the information will be, I'll say, the common thread to every market participant. That's supposed to be taken care of. Taken care by the ISO, so that we should formalize that risk, and then we pose that risk and expose that risk to the old market participants. That's that we need to say we need to improve it, reduce the risk, the common risk, and people, and we should use a market mechanism to basically to incentivize risk mitigation. So that means that when there are risks that can be clearly defined, exposed to all the market participants, that will be the one that should be managed by the.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. I think we have tons of questions, so I better stop talking. Professor Ninglu, do you want to raise your question yourself?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I do have one major question surrounded with flexibility. I think there are two aspects on that. So currently we know a lot of the flexibility are provided by gas-powered power plants. So I think you mentioned in your slides that most of that could be done by energy storage. So my question is, in the future, especially the 100% energy future, do you perceive that we still have gas-powered plants to help us out with flexibility management, or all the flexibility should be handled by storage or demand response or by hydro?
That's actually a good question. I mean, this is a particular, I mean, if you talk about, I think it depending on different systems there. But if you look at New England, I think the gas unit probably gonna stay there. This is what we're gonna predict. Whether they're gonna be, as you said, whether they're gonna be enough. Well, say that. Okay. If you really talk about flexibility, you're thinking that you know, I will need. My storage will be able, because storage resource can run very fast, and they can have, let's say, they can respond to the change of the system very fast. But if you talk about flexibility only for that very short-term period, let's say a couple of hours in the day, you could say that, oh, I don't need the gas unit. However, you have to think about a longer term. So, for example, if you are talking about like a 2 weeks cold snap or 1 week cold snap, and storage won't be able to do it. It won't be able to help, because if you have the 100% of renewables and you don't have an on-site fuel, there's really just purely depending on the weather condition. So there's no control. That means we do not have a control. The generator does not have a control about their fuel input, basically, their input, basically. So that's we're actually talking. That's very, very important about energy security now. So I don't know whether we should consider that is a flexibility or not. If you talk about short term, I agree with you. Maybe you don't need that gas unit. But if you talk about long term, meaning a extended period of you know, for example, you know, extreme weather condition, cold snaps, and supplying disruptions. So you definitely need secure, fuel secure resource.
Thank you. I think there was one related question, maybe very quickly, Ning, on stochastic unit commitment. Just to clarify, you had a question that, is there any stochastic unit commitment algorithm used in operation? I think just very quick answer to that.
You mean
they have had unit commitment which is stochastic. Is any ISO using anything like that? I think Ning is asking the same question.
I don't think so. No one actually using that especially in the market environment. Remember, we did do some robust unit commitment, but it's more related to the reliability. So that means when we performed such analysis, we consider the different uncertainties in terms of committing the unit. It's not under the market construct.
Thank you. Okay, so I think there are many more questions here. I don't know exactly this person who asked, but it is don't even understand the question. The question is, does ISO, what are plans to be employed by ISO New England something about defense. Just a minute, I lost it. That is, what are the defense plans currently implemented in New England system? I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe the person.
Maybe you can
clarify.
Yeah.
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 I'm here.
Can you explain?
Yeah, what I mean is like defense plans, such as when you're under the contingency, you need to split the grid, or you need to have under frequency load shedding. Those emergency defense plans.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about islanding and
yeah, or under frequency load shedding. Usually,
well, definitely you will start you know, like load shedding. So we in the emergency situation, there are a couple of I can forward you some of the you know, our operating guide. So first of all, you can see that there are many steps over there. So for example, we're gonna look at first we're defining the emergency. Okay, so we're gonna have to deploy the spinning reserve and deploy, you know, operating reserve and deploy spinning reserve. Then there was after that we're gonna conduct load shedding. The load shedding is not really the firm load shedding; it's actually voluntary load shedding. For example, it could be related to water reduction. So we're gonna reduce, you know, the wattage in certain areas. Automatically, the load will be reduced. Then we will have things like emergency purchase from the neighboring control area. So those, when all those things are gone, then you are talking about really the firm load shedding.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at time here. So there is another question of. I'm just going to read rather than call people so that we make it through questions. What plans will be employed by the ISO New England to coordinate numerous DRs?
To coordinate the DRs?
Yes. Do you have plans for that? I think that's the question by Wei Lin.
Yes, the DRs is currently we don't have much penetration. Well, no, so I take it back. We don't have a controllable DRs, a lot of controllable DRs. We don't have that. You know, we have a lot of the, you know, behind the meter PVs, so solar PVs there. So under the FERC order 2222, we actually allow people to aggregate. So so from ISO perspective, we're not gonna control individual DRs. We're not, because they're gonna participate in the ISO New England market through aggregation. So what we're gonna deal with is just aggregators. So we do ask them to give us information about individual DRs, but the control system will be only on the aggregation level. So we will only.
I think there is a related question here by Matthew Go. He was basically asking, how do you envision aggregation taking place, and how is it related to FERC order 2222?
Well, that's what we have.
That's why you're doing it. Yeah, right. Okay, and then Nirmal, you want to ask your question? I am slowing down here. Nirmal, do you want to ask question? I think this is the same thing about aggregation. How do you make, you know, I think Tongxin, I think two of us have had also a lot of discussions on diamonds. You know, we have the dynamic monitoring system in which aggregators at different levels participate. So we have been writing about this for the last 15 years, but this is why I was asking the question about how do you go from these concepts to actually putting in and accepting it through regulations. So I think we already answered that question, Nirmal. Brian Patterson, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I was wondering to what extent hydrogen as a storage element and a fuel source combination in fuel cells are contemplated and or figured in the long-term future mitigation of load balancing.
I have not thought about this. hydrogen. I think from the market perspective, I think what we say that the market is a technology mutual. So we're not going to say we're going to prefer a certain type of technology, as long as they can provide the energy, for example, energy and service or capacity product to the market, then they will be able to integrate it, be able to participate in the market and be integrated into the system. There's no particular strategy saying that, oh, we're going to favor the hydrogen technologies.
Okay, I have two more quick questions before we finish the hour, and I want to go through those. The question, I don't know who asked, says, does the current capacity market or limiting prices in scarcity pricing ensure cost of new entry?
Ensure what? So
cost of new entry, cost recovery, I believe. Cost recovery.
Oh, sure. Yes. I mean, the whole point of a capacity market is really thing is actually, first of all, is to recover the missing money, and while at the same time to ensure the system adequacy. You mentioned two things about the so the capacity market. What we have right now is, first of all, as I said, is the missing money. The other one is actually encourage the entry and exit. So participants should be able to exit from the market, both from capacity market and energy market. But in order to ensure the reliability of the system, the new entry had to be coming in. So that actually, we use a capacity demand curve, which is derived based on what we call the net cost of new entry, to tune the capacity demand curve such that the new capacity can come in to replace existing capacity.
Okay, two more quick questions, actually, not one. Odon Botterud from MIT. Odon, you want to quickly ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Great. Thanks. Great talk, Tongxin. So these are very ambitious plans for decarbonization. And typically, I guess the market design changes slowly, gradually, one small step at a time. Can we continue with that type of process, or do we need a more fundamental change at some point here, do you think?
Oh, you mean that the future market design?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a big question. I think it's also asked by FERC too. You know that recently FERC has been asking each ISO to file provide comment. I'm not saying comment. Information about their directions. But to basically facilitate the clean energy transaction. But you can see, as I mentioned in there, I mean, there are a couple items there. I can't talk about too much about the other ISOs, but you can look at it. What we're having in our market is saying their biggest thing is the capacity market changes. How do we align capacity credit with your reliability contribution? There are changes working on I mean, there are big policy changes on the either what we call the pathway study, which is talking about what market changes, what kind of market change needed to support clean energy transition. That could include what they call the forward energy market. That could include carbon pricing, which is a big policy debate there. We don't know yet what to do with that. Sure that we're going to introduce more flexibility kind of market that could include just maybe our day-ahead and service market. We're still open in considering other type of reserves that might include dealing with uncertainty, dealing with that like a longer duration, let's say source loss in the system. So kind of dealing with energy, either we call energy adequacy or not. Long term, people have been thinking about the, whether we should come out with a market to dealing with the energy, what we call the energy adequacy or energy security. So that's all the direction there. Operational mass that I mentioned today, we need a better metrics such that we can incorporate risk-based operation.
Thank you very much. I think one more question, last question, very dear to my heart, but I think that Brian asked it. I can't quite see who asked it. Wouldn't an HVDC transmission grid improve the ability to deploy renewable energy resources over a greater geographic area? The reason that this question is dear to my heart is we have seen studies recently by people who really are not deep into nitty-gritty operational flexibility and stuff like that, who just basically argue based on the thermal capacity and limits like that, that you need to build more and more. The point that I want to leave, now for whatever it's worth in this discussion is that there is a lot of unused resource capacity as a function of time and geography that and research agenda that Tongxin you outlined really digs into that, is that if we do better operational flexibility, maybe we would not need to build that much. Can you comment on that? And I think that's our last question.
Can I add to your comments there for a second?
Sure.
Because
I think Brian, you asked, right?
Yeah, the HVDC might also make it easier to deploy transmission lines because it can go underground at a much lower cost than you would ever consider putting AC grid underground.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a study right now in Minnesota that's looking at HVDC underground transmission using highway right-of-ways. So they're teaming up with the transportation department and looking at, rather than fighting the social battles of overhead wiring and all that, why not use the right-of-ways that already exist in highways, because HVDC can be buried, and they're only talking about a 5-foot wide area that they would even have to disrupt major interstate highways.
So there are two questions. One is, how would you do it and what it would cost? The other one, when do you decide that you really need, when do you do the trade-off between operating the system more flexibly versus really deciding that you need to build something new? The operations planning, I think line is no longer black and white. And the way I understand what Tongxin has been talking about is actually how do you walk that line with different innovations?
So I'm not very familiar with that, HVDC. I mean, if you talk about HVDC, that for us, for example, if you're gonna say that HVDC can facilitate integration of renewables, especially from outside of the region, I mean, definitely can help, right? So we have it interconnection with Canada, as in New Brunswick and Hydro-Quebec, and definitely you could, we already have phase 1, phase 2 there, so we could be able to bring more renewables into the region. That's definitely true. But at the same time, I agree with Maria, is that you not only need to build HVDC, but also you could use some advanced optimization techniques to optimize, let's say, the utilization of renewables. Right. I think that is also doable.
And there have been studies that show that there is quite a bit of margin there. It's system-dependent answer, but just going into these projections that have been HVDC backbone, $200 billion price tag around the US, that is it needed or not? I think it's it really is a trade-off between the value added, and so maybe in some little links, yes, but not everywhere.
Well, if you go back to your earlier slides on sources and loads, the big changes are all in natively DC technology, both in sources, renewables. Most of them are going to be DC or have to be converted to DC to create a synthesized AC at frequency. And the loads, of course, fast charging EV, as well as heat pumps and such that work on variable speed motors that have a DC requirement. So there's an additional opportunity besides the better transmission flexibility. There's an additional opportunity to in the distribution system at medium voltage and low voltage to distribute DC directly to these new types of loads.
Agreed on. And at
Yes.
that note, let's finish. We have a visitor at MIT, Danilo Obradovic, who just wrote, "Let's go HVDC." He's coming from the Nordic pool from Northern Europe, where there is so much HVDC going, but we don't have any more time to, we can't just replace AC with DC and be done. So I think we need some systematic approach to valuing, not taking technology specific sides, but actually valuing what it does to the system, what does it does to the social.
And we don't necessarily need to replace the AC system, but we are needing to add more transmission capability and new distribution because of the new loads, particularly EV and heat, HVAC, that we need to add new elements to the system. So why not make them with a more effective technology?
So I think some of us have been around for a long time. So the limit for importing power from Hydro-Quebec into New England or HVDC line, the actual limit is actually created by a regional problem of creating voltage collapse in PJM at Warwick. When I was a graduate student, that was a sort of stellar example why you should worry about regional power systems and so forth. So it can't just be, the component by component. Nobody now, when we make the case for HVDC, nobody is looking at these large, what are the actual fundamental limits to what different transfers are. And they are very affected by a lot of these flexible, innovative solutions in the control centers and the participation of DRs. It's a different world. Things are much more flexible, and we need, I guess, new tools and a lot of research on the academic side, I think, to pose these problems and understand. Otherwise, we are just going to end up putting technologies that we like. So, Tongxin, you have some closing remarks, and then we are going to be done.
I'm really just very happy to share my thoughts here, and it's a very good discussion here. Yeah, happy follow up any other questions if you can. If you want to reach out to me.
We very much appreciate your time. I know everybody is very happy, very busy, but I think we are happy with what we learned from you. It opens, at least for academic people, the avenues for rethinking problems, and that's why we wanted to invite you to say it's because there's a lot of position taking that okay, everything can be done. We don't need new R&D. And let's just build and deploy stuff. And it's just not like that. So very much appreciated. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.